Good afternoon, everyone. Great to see everyone. Apologize a little bit late getting started here today, but it's Chris Thorne of HireMilitary, and we're here to have another great conversation talking about transitioning service members, veterans, and military families, and the kinds of career opportunities that are out there for you. And I'm really lucky today. I've had some great guests, but today I'm joined by three amazing individuals, and I'm really, really happy and proud. So I've got with me today Bob Lockett, who is the Chief Talent Officer for ADP. What an amazing company. I've got Harris Morris, who's the Senior Director for Veterans Initiatives with ADP. And I've got an amazing veteran who's really doing an amazing thing, and Nate Moreno, who's the District Manager in Small Business Supply with ADP, and a recent transition. And by the way, I want to start by saying thank you all, because everyone on the panel today is a veteran, and just an amazing thing to get to share the time with you. So glad to have you all here. And, if you don't mind, I'll just kick it right off. And, Bob, I'd really love to go ahead and just start out with you and hear a bit about your background, your military background, and a really amazing post-military career that's really gotten you to this role of Chief Talent Officer with ADP.
Yeah, thanks, Chris. I appreciate it. And by the way, thank you for your service. Not too bad for a Navy guy to get this event started. So we're all appreciative of what you're doing and what you bring together, for sure. And by the way, I think it's important that we maintain our camaraderie as fellow veterans. And some of those jokes never end, and I'm grateful to be able to do that. So let me share with you a little bit about my journey. I will try not to take up too much time, since I feel like I'm the oldest guy other than Chris on the call. But my journey after I left active duty started in recruiting, and I worked for a company called Lucas Group many moons ago to help veterans transition, primarily the officer population. And then we expanded our business as well. So I spent 4 years there, back to grad school part-time, and then I went to Frito-Lay in recruiting. And I never imagined that I would be in a recruiting business or HR, because all the things I heard about HR was that's where they send people who are failures in business. And so by luck of the draw, I started to have great success because I had a few principles in place that really worked well. And that was all the things I learned in the military. Do what you say you're going to do, have a plan and execute. So I was very fortunate to sort of understand and learn along the way. And I had a couple of great mentors too. And the gentleman that brought me to Frito-Lay was a veteran as well. His name was Ron Porter. And he was a great mentor for me to help me understand the dynamics of how corporate America operated. And then, of course, I decided that I wanted to try something different. So I worked at Harrah's Casino in Kansas City in marketing after my stint at HR. And I got to tell you, it was an very interesting journey, but it was a lot of fun, but not the business for me. And again, another veteran helped me with that opportunity. And so I wound up going back into HR for Limited Brands in Columbus, Ohio. And I had multiple sort of roles there to include the head of HR for the express stores function. And then got a call from USAA, and I spent about 8 years at USAA in a variety of positions. I headed up talent acquisition there. I did leadership development there. And I also did a role outside of HR, again, in marketing, in client management, if you will. And it was dealing with all of the veteran service organizations to help sell products, i.e. the credit card, life insurance, and the like. And so From that point on, my journey really took off in HR. It's more specifically in the talent space. I got a chance to be the head of HR for a company in San Antonio, Texas called Hall & Clark, and then got the call to come to ADP in a more publicly traded realm and compete for the top HR job, and landed with the Chief Talent Officer role. So my career's been, I've moved quite a bit. I think I moved officially more in corporate America than I did in the military. And it's been worthwhile for me. And I'm not suggesting that everybody do the same, but I've had a great journey. I'm very appreciative of it. By the way, in every company that I've worked for, I have always been an advocate for veterans. I either was the chairman of the Veterans Business Resource Group here at ADP for a period of time. At USAA, I was sort of one of the senior members to help stand up the first BRG at the time at USAA. And so I've always brought in veterans. I've always helped hire veterans. I've always been an advocate and always will continue to be so.
Awesome. That is so spectacular, and appreciate that. I mean, just what an amazing background, and especially, I admit, that HR person in me has a lot of respect for that path that you took, even that trip through Harrah's. And so I love it. And just to clear up for everyone, the reason we did start late today is because we're pretty sure that my computer has never had 3 Army people at the same time talking with me, and it definitely seemed to have a little bit of a challenge with that. But Harris,
you're generous.
I'd love to hear. I'd love to hear a bit. You've got such an amazing background. It's been such a pleasure, getting to know you and the amazing things that you're doing. Because there at ADP, you really are just pushing this heart and soul of Veterans Initiative, veteran hiring, veteran opportunity. And I'd love to hear, a bit about you and sort of your background and how you came to this role.
Sure. Yeah. So, after 22 years in the Army, I was an armor officer. So not a whole lot of tank kind of stuff going on out in corporate America. So I had to figure out what I was going to do next. I ended up going into the financial industry, working as a project manager, just trying to cut my teeth and understand a little bit about, something that I didn't know about too much. And during the course of that, I got the opportunity to get connected with the veteran space and helping with the veteran program, which led me to ADP, where I've been for about 2 years now, running the Veterans Initiative. In addition to that, I also kind of am a dotted line into our diversity and inclusion team, and then also serve as kind of the vice chair of our business resource group for veterans, of which Bob and I worked together until just recently.
Wow. I love it. Absolutely love it. And that's, especially when you talk about a company like ADP having 2 individuals like you who really are pushing that along to make those opportunities happen. It's amazing. And, Nate, Harris told me we got to have Nate on this one to talk about his experience, as really the young guy of the group, but the one with probably the most recent and relevant experience for those who might be watching right now, what your transition was like and what led you to ADP. I'm excited to hear some more of this.
Absolutely. First of all, thank you for inviting me to this. It's a great honor and pleasure being able to help veterans in any capacity we can. And second of all, I just want to address the crowd viewing us. This is ADP, not ADT, the security company. I needed to get that out of the way quick because we hear that every single time. ADT, the security. No, we are ADP. But yeah, so I had returned home from my deployment overseas. I was a junior enlisted combat engineer. I was a specialist, and I had returned from my deployment overseas, and I flocked to an industry where I think a lot of service members flock to because it's comfortable for us, and that was the private security industry. And not soon after contracting as a private security guard, I was approached by a company based out of Northern Virginia and offered an opportunity to go be a programs analyst supporting the FBI in West Virginia. So for me as a combat engineer, they asked, would you like to be a program analyst? And I'm a combat engineer. I live in dirt holes and blows things up, and you want me to come down and be a programs analyst for the FBI. So, it was one of those decisions where that isn't a call that you get, especially being the job title I was, but they needed people with security clearances, which I had a secret security clearance by the government. So I went and spent a year contracting for the FBI, and it was a great experience. Not only because when I got home from overseas, I was used to working pretty blue collar jobs, labor intensive jobs. And now that I had a deployment under my belt, I knew it was going to make me more marketable as a worker if I wanted to go that route, if I wanted to test myself. So I accepted that position and went down and worked. And I knew that being a programs analyst with the FBI carries a lot of mystique with it because we're not allowed to, say what we're doing, what project we're working on. So that obviously looks great on a resume. But I had started to become very enamored with the thought of getting into the realm of business in any capacity. I had investigated maybe hunting new contracts for my company on the federal contracting level, and started getting mentored by my former the former director of FBI operations down there on what to look for when you're looking for new contracts. Well, I have a friend that is very good friends with me. He actually lives right around the corner from me that works for ADP, and I started seeing that how he made success for himself there and how well he was doing for himself. So I went to him. His name is Joe Tursak, and I asked Joe, "Hey, what are you doing exactly?" I mean, I'm just as ignorant to the payroll world as anybody who doesn't work for ADP at this point. So I asked him, what are you doing? And he goes, well, I work for ADP. I'm a district manager, and I sell payroll. So, given the figure that he gave me, and I mean, it's kind of unfair to use him because he's like the Terminator of payroll. He doesn't stop. So it's unfair to use him as the standard. But given the success that he had made for himself, I had inquired about, okay, what does it take to work for that? I mean, that is something absolutely worth pursuing, especially because, I am just getting ready, that during working for the FBI, I was getting ready to ETS from the Army, and I was looking for a completely clean slate as a civilian, no more drill, no more deployment orders, just a complete new life. I mean, I had dedicated myself to the Army since I was brand new to 20 years old, and here I am at 29, fresh out. So I had gone up for an interview process, and I will tell this to anybody. I thought it was hilarious because it is competitive. It is very competitive. And I tell everybody that the FBI didn't grill me as hard in my interview process as ADP did, because there's an expectation that is to be met when you start working there. And they really want the best quality of worker out there. So I began working for ADP, and not soon after that, I started working with Harris. And, after that, it's just been playing off of each other and innovating new ideas and really creating a lot of new horizons for veteran advocacy moving forward. And I attribute all the things that I'm involved with in the veteran space right now to ADP, because if I hadn't worked for ADP, I got involved with Bunker Labs, and now we're launching their Pittsburgh chapter for veteran business advocacy. At the same time, working on business advocacy for veterans and just veteran everything with ADP. So honestly, it's been a tremendous ride, and I'll take the time to thank Harris right now for sticking with me through this, and we have a lot of good work that we're doing.
We appreciate you, Nate.
I love it. It's interesting. You hit, Nate, on, you're right. Some of the transition standards out there, it's comfortable to go for that contracting role, right? I mean, it feels like, hey, and it's sometimes it's hard to break out of that comfort zone, but then you start building networks. And you mentioned your neighbor around the corner over there works at ADP, and you connected and networked into the company through somebody that you had a relationship with. And isn't that just the way that it works, right?
Yep.
So I absolutely love it. Bob, I can't help but laugh on this because Nate brought up ADP, not ADT, right? And I know first time Harris and I talked, he mentioned that that common mistake out there, but ADP really does have a great brand name and a lot of brand recognition. But there may still be a lot of service members who aren't sure exactly what the company is. Nate mentioned payroll, and there's, let's face it, not many service members and veterans understand what that really means in the larger context. And here, ADP is probably one of the most influential companies in the United States of America, if not globally, when we talk about human resources, finance, and payroll. So could you tell us a little bit about ADP, the company, and sort of what it's all about?
Sure. What I would tell you, Chris, and for those viewers, is there's a misnomer about ADP that we're a payroll company. Now, we do sell payroll as a platform, but think about it. We really are a technology company, and we sell software as a service. So if you think about the automation of payroll, now when we started, of course, we were selling payroll, writing checks and the like, and delivering those checks. But now, fast forward the movie to today, it's about software as a service, where we sell various platforms to businesses, small, medium, and large, on a global scale. So imagine, if you will, for our small business clients, we sell a platform or a program called Run. And that Run platform allows you to do payroll, but it doesn't give you all of the bells and whistles, because you don't have the complexities that you need to deal with if you're a large organization. We're a company of about 60,000 associates globally, global company for sure. And we have the best sales force in corporate America. And I say that unequivocally because many of the salesmen and saleswomen that have worked at ADP moved on to do other things because of the rigors of the training, and the fact that we hold our sales force accountable for delivering results. And we're called, by the way, just for those who love to invest, we're called a dividend aristocrat. That we've increased our dividends over the last 25 years, every year since then. So that's an important thing to remember. So it's a financially solvent company as well. So another platform that we have is for our mid-sized businesses, which is called our major accounts business. And we sell a platform called Workforce Now. And that Workforce Now has much more complexity for larger organizations. And then for our multinational clients, we have sort of an upmarket product and service that we're offering. And we're constantly innovating to find new ways to take on the human capital management space. That includes, recruiting. That includes how do you do talent management. And the thing that I'm most proud of that I oversee now is our performance management systems, as well as our engagement tools that we leverage in our organization, which we use a platform called Standout. So net technology company. We're certainly a Fortune 500 company. I think we moved up to 227. We've got a phenomenal CEO who is super supportive of veterans. And in fact, each year, as Harris puts on our veterans breakfast, he's always there. He's always supportive. We've taken him up to West Point to football games. So he understands the value that veterans bring to our organization as well. So I had to throw that out there. And even in Nate's space, where you would think it's unlikely that vets come in and do well in sales, Maria Black, who is the president of our worldwide sales and marketing, is a staunch advocate for veterans as well. So those things are really important. Those relationships and the belief in the can-do attitude of veterans is really critical to our organization.
That is awesome. So, what a strong organization. I saw the move on the Fortune 500 list. Congratulations on that. That was a great one. And I think, did I see more than 50,000 employees globally, if I saw that correctly? Just really an amazing company there.
It's about 59,000.
Wow. What a platform. And sales, technology, human capital, and human resources management. Just the entire diversity. I love it. So, Harris, Bob threw a bone at you, so I have to ask, you're there and you are the head for the Military Strong, you call it the Military Strong Business Resources Group. So some people might call that the Employees Resources Group, but you guys actually, I love the way you title it, the Business Strong Resources Group. And I love that culture to it, but really the veteran portion of it that you lead. Tell us a little bit about that veteran culture inside this amazing company.
Yeah. So, I want to start this off by saying a little bit about our geography. It's very interesting. It's almost as if we planned it this way. I'm not sure, but we've got some of our biggest offices around the country. They sit in El Paso, Fort Bliss, Texas. We're talking about Norfolk Naval Station. We're talking about Fort Gordon, Georgia, Fort Knox, Kentucky. We have large offices sitting right next to all these military communities. And quite honestly, we'd be foolish not to be tight with that community because of the talent that it brings, whether that be veterans or military spouses. And so I believe that we have a very, very tight knit type of relationship with our local communities, which happen to be military towns. When I think about also what we do, right, as a company, we are about HR. We're about people, taking care of those things that people need. And I just truly believe that resonates very, very much with, the local veteran population, right? They connect with that. It's about the people. It's about that connection. And I think that's something that's really special about ADP is you can bring that piece of you that you had in the military and drop it right in here and feel that you've got a family. We're taking care of one another. We're taking care of people who are our clients. And it just really resonates, for me, and I think for those on the line. Going back to what you were talking about with the business resource group, Military Strong, we've got about 22 chapters across the U.S., and it's an opportunity for veterans, military spouses, and allies who are interested in just supporting that local military community to give back. And so we do a lot of work with various nonprofits who help veterans who are in transition, whether that be working with them on resumes or interviewing. We like to partner with those kind of organizations because our people want to give back to that veteran population from which they either served or maybe somebody in their family served. So it's a pretty great alignment, I got to say.
That is awesome. So I got to tell you, I'm going to just inject a little bit there because, Bob had brought up West Point football for you and him going up there. So I have to agree. Colleen Leiden in the chat threw out a Go Navy. So Colleen, you and me there, we're sticking together here. Okay.
Same on both of you.
I appreciate Colleen's got my back out there. So, so Nate, with all of this, this true veteran environment, this culture of really respecting, admiring, and valuing what veterans bring to the organization. When you joined ADP, did you know about this environment? Is that what brought you in, or did you find out afterwards? Was that part of the culture you knew before coming in, or was it something you learned as you went along?
Well, I want to say that I knew that I was walking into a team-driven success culture. Your success is dictated by your team's efforts, which I could closely relate to, any team or squad you were in a platoon. I know best how to work as a team and not an individual. So I knew that automatically walking through the doors, despite, me walking into an environment where I wasn't familiar with the industry, I knew that I was going to be on a team, which gave me a world of confidence that, okay, if the team is like the team I know, then I'm going to be taken care of. People are going to have my back. So, not so much knowing the inner workings of exactly what each individual team member does or what their role is, but just, that comfort of knowing that you're not alone in this, that you're going to be taken care of, that it's funny how, despite there not being a lot of veterans in my office, the way that the teams are structured are very closely related to the way that a platoon squad is structured. Walking in, you're giving SE that you could, look at like a platoon sergeant, and then you're given somebody to help you out. You get a mentor that is there for you, and every question you have gets answered by them and everybody else. You could look at that like, the sergeant that is ahead of him. And I want to say that though I didn't know whether it would have been military, there's a huge military presence inside or not. I didn't find that out until after I got there, and I was immediately approached by somebody who was on my team that was a vet, a coworker of mine, Nick Clark. And, he immediately brought me into the fold and started identifying the other veterans that worked in the office and say, hey, we have our BRG here in Pittsburgh, and we like to, we're going to have a veterans breakfast. And immediately I felt, the warm embrace of my brothers and sisters from the military, that I'm not alone at ADP, and that I'm not going to be, looked at different for being a veteran or anything like that. So it wasn't until I got in and now I could echo the fact that those structures are in place for veterans that want to consider ADP, that you have a family that lives inside of there that is going to take care of you and make sure you're successful and make sure you meet the expectations that are set for you. So that was really,
love it.
that was really a great thing for me. Yep.
Absolutely love it. And so many transitioning service members, that feeling that, we're going to lose that family, that brotherhood, that sisterhood of fellow service members, that worry that we're going to leave that behind when we take the uniform off. And I love hearing that really it just does extend deep into the workplace, especially in a place like ADP with so strong. So totally cool. So, all right, Bob, I'm going to rewind a little bit on here again, mentioning, I think everyone knows I've got my HR passion. Last week I had Andrew Morton of SHRM on here talking about certification for HR, and it was a great conversation. You had a somewhat non-traditional entry into the HR path, I would say, from your Army time out there. So, if you were to think about what really was the secret to launching you on a path to success for HR, for those who are maybe thinking about trying to follow in your footstep, maybe going to Harris, but following along, what would that tip for that success look like for the HR success route?
Yeah, Chris, great question. And by the way, I had no idea what HR really was and all the complexities of HR when I got out of the Army. I really didn't. I knew that it was about people, and I knew when I got out, I didn't know enough about business. I was absolutely naive. The only thing I knew from age 18 to roughly age 30 was about Army life. And so I wound up going into a recruiting business, and I did it specifically because I wanted to understand what opportunities existed. And I got an offer when I got out, and I'd done my own research. I was going to go into commercial real estate. And sometimes I still kick myself as to why I didn't do that, and I went into HR. But that's a conversation over a beer for sure. But it's, for me, I sort of fell into this profession. And, as I fell into it, I realized that I really had a passion around it, and I could apply some of the principles that I had learned, believe it or not, as an artillery guy, about providing support to the maneuver commanders. And, that's Army parlance. But I said, wow, this is a great way to sort of think about it, that if I got a business unit leader and he needs a critical advisor, like I was when I was field artillery, particularly in direct support to, the commanders, I think that's, an important distinction to make, and how I can think about some of the skills that would translate directly. It's about, well, you've got two jobs. You've got to understand your space, i.e. like artillery, but I also had to understand infantry or armor and how they were moving, maneuver forces. So now I have to understand HR, but I also have to understand the business. So the first thing I'll tell you is that you have to be a business person first to understand how an organization makes money, to understand, what are the expenses tied to an organization. And obviously we all know that labor is the most expensive item for any company in terms of their expense ratio. Okay. So you learn about those things. The second thing I will tell you is there's some practices as you get out of the Army. You might find yourself being asked to take an assignment in HR or in operations or in marketing or sales or wherever the function may be. The key is to understand and learn more about that function before you say that's the only thing I want to do. Because to be honest with you, I never expected to do it. I interviewed for sales jobs and I got offers to go into sales. I got offers to go into engineering. And so, but I turned them all down because I just didn't know enough. And so the advice I would also give, to exiting service members is take your time. You're probably going to work for another 30 years unless you're lucky and you happen to fall into the right situation. Like you go to Wall Street and you make millions. Like I've got some friends that got really lucky after grad school and they made millions. And they said, you know what? I got enough money to last me for the rest of my life. I'm going to go teach. And so they've done those things. But for the majority of us who still have to work and support families, I think it's really important to say, understand that you want to get somewhere, take multiple pathways and don't be afraid to move. I mean, one of the things I encourage service members to do, and this is back in the 90s when I got out, don't lock yourself into staying in a particular town or a location. If you do, you're in effect limiting your opportunity. This is the time in which you can take a chance and take a risk. Think about grad school. Think about going to work for a company for a couple of years and then go back to grad school. There are a variety of different ways in which you can look at it. And then you'll start to see what opportunities present itself and where you can lock yourself in. Does that help?
Absolutely. You know, I love what you mentioned there, because that opportunity that you have to really sort of reinvent yourself as you leave the military is really a unique thing that transitioning service members get to do. It's not easy for other people mid-career to do a reinvention point, and you kind of get that leeway when you transition from the military. So I love that. Love it. You know, Harris, with all this conversation of ADP being so strong in the veteran support space, one of the questions that comes up, and I know it's one that's near and dear to all of us and matters, is what about the military family, that military spouse, and you know, what does veteran support equal military family support within an organization like ADP?
Sure. So, you know, I come at this from the perspective of the military community, right? Veterans are one part of that. Military spouses are another. You know, we at the company have a lot of opportunities. We've had, you know, mil spouses that come work for us. They end up moving jobs because of their spouse, and they've had the opportunities to do that. We have got policies in place that are specific for our military spouses to be able to get time off to go to various events if the spouse is deployed. You know, there's all those other things that come with that. And we've got written policies around that to help try to support, you know, that population with their needs. So, you know, I guess the answer to your question is yes, we do support military spouses. We recognize the amazing skills and things that they bring. You know, it's amazing. I always like to, I use my wife, and I just think about a lot of my friends' wives. They had careers before they ever met me. I don't know why my wife married me, but she did. But, you know, she had a good thing going, and I kind of dragged her down. And, you know, to be able to come back into the workforce and be able to do some of those things, we want to be able to support that, you know, for those that have that skill set.
That's awesome. Spectacular. I appreciate that. And I think that's another thing you and I share. I shot way above my level when I got married and got very, very lucky on that one. And boy, how lucky am I that she's been able to drag this anchor around with her. But, you know, it's so, all right. So Nate, this is the part. So we're going to ask, you know, Bob and Harris to go la, 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 la for a second here. So I want you to give me some honest input now. So you've been with ADP, you know, for over 6 months now.
Yep. And,
you know, we're talking a lot about this veteran and military family culture and support and strength of that. So, okay. Inside scoop. Don't worry. I just put them on mute. They can't hear us. So tell me, is it real? Is it real?
I'll tell you, you're all officers, and I know you're all in cahoots here, and I'm the only enlisted man, so I don't know if I should open my mouth or not.
We expect
I'm
you
with
to.
you. Oh, Harris, you gave it away. Now he knows he's not on mute.
Well, anyway, now, levity aside, it is real. I have seen ADP go above and beyond any company that I had really worked for before, making sure that its veterans are well taken care of and are given that support structure. You know, like I said, the one of the first things I experienced walking through the door was a veteran that had already worked there for a while, was told that I was a veteran, and immediately approached me and completely, you know, immersed me into the culture of what we do inside of ADP as veterans. You know, all of the events, all of the think tanks, you know, it really led me to growing a great working partnership with Harris. And I mean, we're not done. There's so much work to do still. We're developing so much right now that is really going to strengthen us and really, you know, show our finer colors when it comes to outreach to veterans. So absolutely. I mean, it's there. I've devoted a lot of time from ADP to it, you know, wherever I can. So it's absolutely there, and it's doing nothing but getting bigger and better right now.
I love it. Awesome. Thank you. I appreciate it. And, you know, hey, let's be clear. I'm right there with you. You and me, we got the E brackets on the end of this video, and we got the officers crunched in between us there. So, you know, it's That was not intentional, but I just noticed when you brought that up how that worked out. So Bob, this is really a good, Bob, you had obviously, a good military career, a great post-military career. There's lots of people hopefully watching this who, whether they're looking at ADP or otherwise, they're preparing for a military transition and entering a workforce and trying to learn how to navigate this whole, how do I get a civilian job? And so, we'd love to make sure a lot of that talent comes to you at ADP, but I'd love just from your insights and what you've achieved, where you've gotten to, if you had some tips for those transitioning service members, how can they be successful in preparing for the transition, getting that civilian career, not just a job, but, making that connection? If you had, one or two tips, what would those be?
Absolutely. Well, a few things that I would tell you. You've got to do your homework. And here's what I mean. Before you exit the military, there are resources available to you to give you a perspective of things that you might be able to tap into. So one thing, for example, is how do you assess yourself about what it is that you might have a propensity to do? So you've got sources that can do that. You can take online assessments and say, yeah, look, I really like people and I'm really good at certain things. So take that initial assessment just to get a broad sense of who you are as a person, what your personality type is like, and that'll give you some perspective of things you might want to do. For example, I knew I was a people person and there was no way I was going to do anything related to programming and being an individual contributor. Just not good for me unless it was sales. Right? The second thing is, one of the keys is to build a strong network. And people will say, well, yeah, I don't like to go brown nose with people and the like, and that's a bunch of BS. What I will tell you is it's important to build a strong network. And you can do that in a variety of ways. You've got a tool like LinkedIn. You've got people that you knew that you served with. You got people that you will meet. And the fact that you're a veteran will give you an instant connection with those folks. So that's really, really important because you never know how this may come up. Just to give you an example, Harris's predecessor, a guy by the name of Tom Hebert, he got the opportunity to come to ADP because of networking, because he knew a guy who happened to know our CEO, and they talked about starting a veterans initiative at the company. I was fortunate when I made my transition, from the Army, to Lucas Group, that it was a group of veterans, people that I knew and was stationed with. The same thing happened when I went to Frito-Lay. All the jobs that I've gotten over time have all been because I've known someone. I don't think I've had a search firm call me with the exception of one. And oh, by the way, with the search firm, the guy at the search firm that placed me as the head of HR at Harlan Clark in San Antonio, Texas, guess what? He was a veteran. And so I think there's a natural propensity to sort of think about how do I build the right network? Now, the other things that I will tell you is, be humble and learn, because I was pretty cocky when I got out. I was like, hey, you know what? I'm a combat veteran. I've commanded a unit of 130 soldiers overseas. I know a hell of a lot. I can make a difference. I know I can do this stuff. The reality of it was I let my ego get in the way. So I had to learn to humble myself and say, hey, by the way, you don't have all the answers. What you should be doing is listening and asking a lot of questions just to understand first, and then you can provide a perspective. Because guess what? Believe it or not, the principles that you've learned in the military in many cases are applicable. And Harris knows I talk about this all the time. I talk about things like leader's intent. I talk about the after action review. That's so critical to all of us. I talk about continuous learning. So all the things that we learn in the military, you can apply at the appropriate time. But if you learn to listen, build your network, and start thinking about what things in a broader context that you like to do, then it'll help you narrow down your focus a bit and say, well, look, I know I'm not the guy who works in manufacturing. I'm more so this type of person. Then build your network. You've got LinkedIn. You can always connect with me. And, I'm an advocate for veterans, even veterans' kids and family members. And as Harris mentioned to you, all the things that we do at ADP, I'm on the board of the Johnny Mac Soldiers Fund, which we've been around for about 10 years, and we've raised over 24, I might get the numbers wrong, at least $16 million and 95% of that money goes back to the veterans, and so in that community. So it's really important to build that network, stay connected to the veteran community, but also branch out a little bit and find other folks that you can network with that might value your skill. Does that help, Chris?
That's all right. Oh, that helps so much. I appreciate that. And I love those words because, a couple things, networking, it is the path to success. I always say, build a network when you don't need it, and your network will be there for you when you do need it. And so starting early and definitely, one of my I've got a saying for everything, but one of my favorite ones is your network equals your net worth. And in the jobs market, that really is such a case. So, Harris, probably, same question for you. I mean, that networking is a passion. I love it. I could stop right there and say, thank you. I love it. But I know you've got probably some other thoughts as well. If you had a suggestion, what would that look like, Harris?
Boy, I've got lots, but I'll try to narrow it down to a few. Obviously the networking is important, and I was one who wasn't comfortable reaching out to people. It doesn't feel natural as a vet, in the military, it's just not something we did. But what I can tell you is that when somebody reaches out to me, and I think most vets feel the same way, they're gonna answer the call. If you reach out to somebody blind, they will at least have a conversation with you. And that's a great way to learn about a company from the inside out. If you know what industry you're going into, you know directionally where you want to go, but you're trying to confirm, I think it's very important to talk to as many people as you can. Get a mentor, right? There's a lot of organizations out there that provide mentors. Get as many as you can. Talk to as many as you can. Learn from as many as you can. One of the things I would put out there, and it's just as possible, make sure you have your financial house in order, as much as you possibly can, because a lot of times people are taking a job because they have to, as compared to taking the right job for you. And if you have a little bit of flexibility in that way, it can make all the difference in your happiness for you and your family in the future. I think going out, getting credentials, if you can. Again, there's a lot of great organizations out there, nonprofit, that will help you get those civilian credentials. And if you can get those, that just puts you that much further ahead when you go for that first job. So, at the end of the day, this is about having a plan and starting that plan far enough in advance before you're getting out of the military so that you can execute on that plan.
Yeah, and Chris, if I could add one more comment. The one thing I want everyone to keep in mind, where you start is not where you will finish, okay? So, and again, if you use me as an example, I started in recruiting. Now I'm in the talent space, and I've taken paths through HR. So your initial job is there to get experience, but don't think that that's going to be the end all be all, because you're going to want more. In some cases, you'll get an opportunity to do those things. So I apologize.
No, I love it. I mean, both of your points there are Harris mentioned, you got to have a plan to start early. None of us in our military careers would wake up in the morning and try and figure out how we're going to get promoted 3 ranks by the end of the day. It just doesn't work that way. It takes time to put it in place, to get your training, to get your experience, to build your networks that are going to get you there. So you got to plan early and work toward it. And then, as you were mentioning, Bob, you start on a path, doesn't mean you're locked into that path. But if you don't start on a path, then you don't have anywhere to deviate from, right? You got to at least start walking a path, and then you can deviate from there as you go. So I absolutely love it. So Nate, as our most recent transition in this, and some great tips from amazing senior professionals. But if there was one thing, if you could rewind back to just before you got out and when you just knew that everything was all locked on, if there was one thing that you could tell yourself then that now that might help somebody watching today, what would that be?
Well, if I'm putting my shoes in the position of somebody that's about to get out, I would say be bold. I had to take a huge risk leaving a very comfortable job, making a very good living, contracting with the FBI, And I rolled the dice and applied for a job at ADP and came. And do your homework too, because honestly, if I didn't have a couple of buddies that I knew that worked for ADP, I don't know that I would have ever found my way to ADP's front door. Investigate the route that you want to go before you start walking down it, to make sure it's for you. But I mean, I just think that no matter what MOS or what job title you are in the military, do not let that dictate what's possible for you. This is especially important for somebody that was, a combat engineer. And like I said, living in pretty tough circumstances and, bribing your friends with energy drinks to eat bugs out in the field. Those are the guys, that I was one of them. I was no different than that. We were rough and tumble. And, from the outside looking in, what place do I have in the world of business or finance? Or, talking to chief financial officers and business owners every day. If I were to ask myself that question while I was still, in the line platoon or, contracting for the government, I would really not be sure. But it was the ones that I knew that worked for ADP that said, Nate, your personality fits really well with what we do for a living. You have the interpersonal skills and the emotional intelligence to do that. So it doesn't matter if you're infantry or MI or, HR in the military, as long as you have the willingness to learn the process at ADP, you could be successful at this job. Our training program is phenomenal. You have to have the confidence and the willingness to go forth with the training. But, it doesn't matter what you were in the military. It's the state of mind when you walk through the door. And that's the advice that I would give to this crowd is I was no different than any of you, on the lowest form. And ADP has been nothing but good to me. And we're doing great work.
Awesome. And Bob and Harris, I hope you've got some public affairs folks who just recorded Nate saying that and is going to put his face on the front of a commercial for you. That's about as strong a statement as you could put out there. Wow. So, I love it. Absolutely love it. So, all right. So Harris, this one's for you. Obviously, we've had great conversations. We work, with the DoD Skill Bridge program with hiring opportunities and great relationships and building opportunities. What do you think of transition programs to set service members up for success? Things like DoD Skill Bridge and other programs. What do you think about those?
Yeah, it's a great question. And it's a great question for right now. At this point in time, I think we all can look around and see the current environment that's out there. And, there's a lot of people without jobs. And I don't want to be a Debbie Downer, but I think that program in particular, what an amazing thing. You're going to get an opportunity, right, to go work for a company while you're still in the military, show them what you can do. And you just got a foot in the door that's going to be really, really hard to get. Doesn't matter what company it is. It's, the hiring's down in general. And so I think it's a tremendous opportunity. And I would highly encourage anybody that's listening to take advantage of that if you can at all. And, it also, the other thing that it does for you is you go work for a company and you get to try something out and you may realize, maybe there's not a good culture at this place, or maybe this isn't what I wanted to do. You get an opportunity to learn that as a freebie. And so I think that's a great, great thing. And, I'm a big believer in it. We've had a few folks come through those types of programs with us. We're hoping to increase that number. And so just take advantage of it. There's so many great programs out there for those that are getting out.
I love it. It's, it's a little bit of try it before you buy it on that career after the military and gives companies an opportunity to really take a little bit of a risk on somebody that maybe they wouldn't be able to justify doing a full direct hire on, and give them an opportunity to get a foot in the door and show what they can do. So appreciate that. It's wonderful. So, I know we've been running kind of long here, but it's been too great of a conversation to cut short. There's been some great stream conversation. And for our Air Force and Marines up there, don't worry, I've seen you in there too. It's not, we got love for you as well there. the smaller services. So that's, we just don't have them in here yet. But I didn't see any Space Force on there yet. But we'll get them. I'm looking forward to it. So, but I mean, as we wrap it up, though, I guess maybe Nate, I'll go ahead and start with you as we go ahead and wrap up for today. Any final thoughts that you have that you'd like to share with anyone watching today?
Absolutely. Yeah. I think for final thoughts, I'd just like to address the live crowd and let you know that there's guys just like me that work for this company that are 100% willing to have you in or go ahead and find me on LinkedIn, send me a message. I'd be 100% willing to talk to you one-on-one about how my experience was coming into this company and how, it's the best move I've made in a professional career by far. Financially and just networking and being able to innovate and grow ideas. They're fostering these ideas that we're having, that blossom there. I would just say it's worth the risk, honestly. Take it from somebody that went to an industry as soon as I got out of the military that a lot of us go to. That is not the only industry that we are capable of flourishing and being successful in. So if you're a guy watching or a girl watching this video that's saying, that this might be the only card I have to play, it's not. Reach out to one of us. Let us help you get in and point you down the right path. That's all.
Awesome. I love it. That's such a strong message. I appreciate that. So, Harris, what about you? Any parting shots for the crowd out there?
Yeah, one of the things I would highlight, and we touched on it, but I can't overemphasize the importance of this, but understand what your values are, understand what they are for you as an individual. And a lot of us, those values were formed while we were in the military, and the things that we value were the things that we valued then and will value after we leave. And you can't get rid of that, so you need to find a place, a culture that truly embraces those values, whether that be at ADP or some other company. But I think it's really one of the most important things. We talk about pay and we talk about all those other things, but your happiness will come from the alignment of your values with the culture of that company. I think I'll leave it at that.
That's a pretty strong leave right there. So I absolutely love it. So thank you so much. All right, Bob, it's hard to imagine a better person to sort of have parting final thoughts here. What would you share?
Yeah, thanks, Chris and Harris. Harris, you nailed it. I made many moves in my career, and I can tell you that there are a couple of moves that I made throughout my career, and it goes back to alignment around your values and culture. There are certain organizations, while they may be great organizations, may not be the right fit for you based on how they do business and how they treat their people and the way you think things should happen. That's really important. Culture is critically important to your success in an organization. The other thing that I want you to remember as you enter corporate America, you have just worked in an environment that was probably the most diverse organization that you will see once you get out. The beauty of that is organizations spend tons of money on diversity and inclusion initiatives because we want to ensure that the playing field is level for all Americans. What you learned in the military has been so critical in how to deal with people from different walks of life, different backgrounds, and even people that have different points of view than you do. Okay? That value of you bringing that to corporate America it's going to be real, and it's going to pay dividends as you go forward, because you'll learn to focus on the action instead of the individual and making it a personal thing. You'll be able to depersonalize it and not become so emotionally engaged in things that you'll be able to keep a balanced perspective. So I wish all of you the best as you think about your careers, but remember, culture matters. Being able to listen and learn matters. And again, where you start is not where you're going to finish. If you have goals, get the support you need, and you will go achieve those and find the mentors and network along the way. So I tried to sum up a few things, but culture at the end of the day is really, really critical.
That is so outstanding, and I really appreciate you bringing that up as a point as we finish. And I think there's so much opportunity for service members to do exactly what you said and really come into an organization, not just culturally fit, but culturally advance the organization out there. So I appreciate that. So, well, gentlemen, I appreciate your time here today too. I know I took more of it today than what we had planned on, but really just such a great conversation. I appreciate it. So for everyone who's out there with us today, Bob Lockett, an amazing leader in industry, Harris Morris, just really a true veteran program leader, and Nate Moreno, who's going to be the next Bob Lockett out there. I already know it, and it's been a true pleasure having all of you here.
Those are some shoes to fill.
I
for
appreciate
sure.
it, gentlemen. And for everyone out there, Thursdays at 1 p.m. Pacific time, 4 p.m. East, I'm going to be right back here, bring you other industry leaders to talk about your veteran and employment opportunities and your transition. So come join us. And gentlemen, thank you so much again. I look forward to seeing you all really soon. Go Navy.
Thanks, Chris.
Thanks, Chris.
Beat Navy.